Hello and welcome to Mana Chats. Today we're going to talk about Star Ocean: The Divine Force. I have been going through games pretty quickly. I'm going to need to slow down and actually cover some of the games I've completed, which is namely Asterigos, and finish some of the other ones. So we'll have to see what I talk about next. But for right now, I want to talk about this game because I picked it up. It looked like it had some potential, but I wasn't too sure, so let me just hit you with the score that I would give it. I'd say this is about a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 with some fixes, some improved fluidity, some performance. This game's pretty nice. I'll let this dialogue play out for a second. Gives you an idea of how people talk as you're running around the map and goofing around.
I'm good. This is no problem for me. When I went with Dr. Eason on his field work, we slept under the stars more often than the roof of an inn.
Well, that's definitely reassuring. We should get to the village after crossing the bulk of the Adali region, right? One last push, people. Let's do this.
Alright, so you get a little taste of some of the interactions. The characters will often comment on what you're doing as you're exploring, especially if you're going the wrong way. So, you know, if you start to head south because there's like a little empty corridor or a little floating platform that is, you know, off the beaten track, and you know there's a treasure there because you use your little treasure finder thing, which I just put up this little ring, which will tell me if there's loot around in a certain bubble, which you can see here, and you start going that way, oftentimes the characters will start to be like, hey, are we supposed to be going the opposite direction? Which I find kind of funny. I think it's a nice little detail to try to orient you, but it can get a little frustrating when you're just trying to pick up some loot. The main draw, or the unique thing in this game, I think, that stands out is this cool little movement thing. It's pretty fun to be able to blast around. Oh, and you have an insane 30-mile-an-hour sprint speed, which is definitely handy. You know, I guess everyone here would just ace the Olympics, but I'm not going to complain about that because they do make the areas pretty big. I think at a glance the areas look really nice. Like, there is something just majestic about being in a party, walking through the canyons. Like, this is just a very classic fantasy moment, you know, with your robot hovering around, kind of ruining it a little bit. You can switch to any character in combat and out of it as you see fit, which is pretty nice. I appreciate that. And you have some actions you can do while you're in the overworld. Everyone has like a simple slash or a simple attack to like break rocks or pots and stuff, because, you know, it's a JRPG. You gotta break pots if you go into someone's house. People have made that joke a million times, and they'll make it a million times more. I played this for about 12.1 hours, so let me get down to why I say it's a 6 out of 10, and then I'll show off some combat and stuff. So overall, this is not a bad game. It's not one I would proudly recommend to somebody, especially not if you're trying to be, you know, really impressive and show them the depths of your taste. But it's also not as bad as it seemed at first glance. I was coming into this with a very unfair mindset. I was seeing it and I was like, oh my god, this looks like a 4 out of 10, maybe even a 3. It looked so janky. The performance when I booted it up was nothing to write home about. It's still not beautiful considering how strong my hardware is, and, you know, I am running it on max. It's not, you know, the most gorgeous game. It does have certain things going for it though, like, you know, the movement on cloth is okay, especially noticeable like on hair. Like, this looks decent. It reacts to what I'm doing. It's a little overreactive. Like, you know, this guy, when he moves, it's like everything's expanding. His hair is going a little wild. At the same time, I have to say this is one of the nicest looks for a robe I've seen in a while, where when you're moving, it actually does seem pretty flowy and majestic. God, I wish more robes looked like that, because, you know, it's carried out pretty well. So I do like certain aspects of it. Some things look a bit stiff, like this guy's hair seems a little stiffer on the ends, but let's not get into that nitty-gritty yet, because I can talk way too much about that, because I obsess over those details for no good reason. The thing that I think this game lacks is polish, and that's largely why it's not a higher score. It also has a lot of little things that can get very aggravating, and just get annoying and aren't really fun and feel like things that could be fixed pretty easily. I'll try and touch upon some of those, but if you play it for yourself, I'm sure you'll start to collect a list of your own. the fidelity of the graphics, it's a little blurry. I turned off a filter to make it a little less so. I really wish they had some more options for that. It's a little frustrating to see that. Dialogue is okay. You got a little taste of it. The characters are there. They have some degree of personality. Everybody tries to have a slightly different dialect, you know, whether if they're from the future, like Raymond, or not the future, but, you know, from space, from the ocean of stars, and having a more futuristic background, to Leticia here, who's a princess of this world, this underdeveloped planet. You know, she speaks with a more Shakespearean, like, oh, pray thee tell, like, kind of stuff. Although I don't think she literally says that. It's, you know, you get the idea. She has a very refined way of speaking, very diplomatic. You know, she has to act like that, like the nobility. Same thing with Albert. Nina's just more of a young girl who has some skill in healing. She's got some magic, which is like cytology or cymology or some weird name, some magic jumbo thing they use. I forget the exact term. I'll remember it later and kick myself for forgetting it. I think it might be seismomancy, something like that. They have a few different magic styles, but you get the idea. Every character kind of plays up their cliched stereotype, and so far they haven't really strayed too far from that. They're enjoyable enough characters. They're voiced pretty competently. They're not really grating, but I wouldn't say they really stand out and make me super interested. We could definitely do more with the princess and explain her backstory, especially since I selected her as my main character. You know, I know the basics, though. You know, she's doing something. There's something with her father. She's trying to research something going on that's got some political leanings. They're looking for someone that might be able to help, that kind of thing. Albert is her loyal retainer. Been with her since she was young. He's a very serious guy. He's got a condition where one of his arms is... I guess if something happened to it and it's replaced with this weird, like, silvery looking thing that someone made for him out of magic that is growing with him, but now he's feeling sick. So they're also on a, like, sort of a side quest to figure what that's about. Nina is also looking for some answers, I believe, about that. She's kind of tagged along kind of abruptly, but, you know, she wants to learn more about her past, and this is a good opportunity. So that's why she's here. And Raymond, he crash landed here while trying to do your one-day delivery of Amazon, and he lost your package but took a photo of it anyways and sent it to you all crumpled up. No, he's supposed to be delivering this robot here that we're now using. You know, what a great delivery guy. But he crashed, and he immediately whipped out his cell phone and was just showing off all his tech, which I'm pretty sure breaks what you're supposed to do in Star Ocean. I only really played maybe 2 of those and not very much of them. A few months ago, before I even knew this game was coming out, I know I played one of the earlier Star Oceans on the Switch, and I briefly remember, you know, the futuristic people being a little cautious about revealing all that information to people from these, what they call underdeveloped planets. But Raymond seems pretty content with it, so maybe something's changed since those games. I'm not so sure, but they seem pretty fine, being like, yeah, I got a cell phone. Oh yeah, here's my GPS. Oh, have you heard about shots and vaccinations? And you know, all these medieval era fantasy people are like, what's a shot? Why do you shove needles into people? So, you know, they have that kind of banter, and that's kind of fun. The game, though, yeah, it feels like it might be something that might have come out like 5 years ago in terms of polish. It's not bad, but it's not great. You will notice it, but you can still enjoy it. The combat is probably one of the more fun things. I might as well show some of that right off the bat, because that's a little more exciting. So you can get sneak attacks if you attack without being seen. You'll see that's a surprise attack. You'll notice I have AP and something called VA. AP is what lets me, for example, dash for a while. It slowly gets consumed. I use a ranking of it when I start a dash and then when I stop one. You can dodge whenever you want. Doesn't cost energy, but it slows down your AP regen. It also gives you benefits if you do it. Then there is the importance of the blindside attack, which you just saw there. It also unlocks more AP, which you keep until you reload the game. I'll explain why that pisses me off later. But you can do aerial combos. You can run out of AP like that and kind of awkwardly flail around. Oh, I don't know if I can knock this guy off the cliff, but I'm kind of curious to see if I can. Oh, oh. Come on, get knocked off the cliff. Now, let's see what the game decides happens when this guy falls. I can't do my full combo because I don't have enough AP for it. Oh, I thought that would be a nice dodge. Oh no, Nina died. My healer. This might be a little chaotic for what I was trying to show, but it's also kind of funny. When someone goes down, you can heal them manually. Let me bring Nina back up because she's the healer. Oh, here's my good combo. But I got interrupted. So you can see combat can go throughout all the terrain, and that involves some potential chaos. Oh, and I left the area too far. Let's get back in there and let's do this a little bit more nicely. I got a little too playful, I think. Now, the importance of blind sides, which I kind of lost sight of because I was trying to knock that guy off a cliff, because that's fun. The importance of blind sides is, you might have noticed, you might not have. I'm going to try and focus on them a little more. What they let you do is, if you're in the middle of one of these dashes and you press left or right, a little bit before you hit the enemy, and the enemy is focused on you or about to do a big attack, and has eyes, because yes, that actually does matter. If an enemy has no eyes and doesn't track you like that, you can't do a blind side. But if they have eyes and they are paying attention to you, you can sneak on the side and stun them, and you get like a 2 times damage bonus while that happens. You also massively increase the amount of AP that you have at your disposal if you do enough of these successfully, and you keep that for quite a while. I believe until you get hit a few times, you can lose AP like that. Generally, I'm able to keep a pretty full AP meter because you dash around like a mad person doing your most powerful combos, which is pretty fun. You can kind of see a little bit of how that movement can work there. Your movement is limited. You can't just infinitely do these attacks because it does drain a separate meter, but I regen it because I do lots of, normal attack combos. You can control your attack combo. You can alter what's in it, which is a pretty nice little feature. I do get a little confused what they want you to do when you're doing a fight against a boss that doesn't have eyeballs, because even the tutorial they give you pretty much just says, good luck, douchebag, figure it out for yourself, blind sides won't work, and that seems like a kind of important aspect of the combat. Also early on, you don't get your healer for a while, and that means you spend a lot of time going through your menu and picking stuff up, especially if you're on the hardest difficulty. I ended up just not really worrying about it and just focused on my main character and dodging well, and just handled most of the bosses like that when things got tough, because I would just try to res an enemy and you get stuck in place for a little while, so you can't just insta-heal everyone as you're using items, so it's great to eventually get your healer. But yeah, the combat is pretty fluid, it's pretty fun, it can get a little chaotic near cliff sides, as you saw. Definitely not the way I expected it to work. Aerial combat is a little but it functions. It tries to translate whatever combo you've created into the air, and that's all right. Yeah, sci-fi fantasy, I really do like that idea. Again, they're a little ham-fisted about it, but so far it's been tolerable. It doesn't really feel like they do it enough in some ways, but again, since I'm not super versed in Star Ocean, this could be kind of the norm. But so far it's been all right. I think there's some okay RPG stuff here. You have your party management. It looks like you have a reserve list. So presumably we're going to get a lot more character options. And I imagine you can have a max of 4 or 5 people at once. I'm not sure what it's going to be. Right now with 4 people, it feels like a lot. But it does look like there could be some more space here. I think 4 is probably the max. You get your general items. You get weapons. You get gear. You get different accessories that have all kinds of things like have 5% more guts or 15% more knockback on things that you attack, and 30% plus 38% of bestowed status elements, and very particular specific things like 54% damage dealt when your HP is lower than 25%. So there's interesting things you could do with this. I'm sure you could find a way to break the game. The flying contraption with you can assign skills to it, so you can learn different ones. I've only picked up a few. I extended the scanning range, but you could also make it so you can sneak better. So enemies don't pick up on you and you can surprise attack more. I made it so I get more of the gauge, which lets me do dash attacks. Whenever I land normal attacks, I get more rewards for perfect dodges. So whenever I see big obvious hits, I try to take advantage. And then when you move around to blindside something, I made it cost a little bit less to do that additional maneuver because it costs extra to move to charge at something and then dash to the side at the last second. As you explore, you actually power this thing up, which is actually a pretty nice feature, and I want to give credit to that. It encourages exploration, and it gives you a tangible combat boost and an exploration boost. So you get these little crystals that are hiding all around the map. I don't know if there's any around me right now. There were some on those little floating platforms. Basically, you want to pay attention, and you want to kind of fly around, get higher ground when you need to, and you collect those gems, and then you can spend them on the Duma system, which is kind of neat. And then to show you how that kind of works, I have none to spend because I've used them all. But you could go here, and you can see it's not like insignificant. Another 5% amount of gauge I get when landing an attack for each level is pretty decent. You also have an item creation system. I've not gotten very far in this game, even though I'm 12.1 hours in. So all I can do is compound things. Your character's all individually level for this, so there's some depth here. They also pick up talents. Some of them started with a talent in this, and then I also learned another one. Like Team Player didn't start on Leticia, but by making a few things, I was able to do it. I don't believe there's set patterns for construction, because sometimes you make something with the same item and you get an item, and sometimes when you use the same thing, you do not. Sometimes you get like a junk item. I don't know if I'm gonna be lucky enough to do that, but look, I got something completely different this time. So there is a crafting system. You level up separately for that. So yeah. In terms of other RPG things, there's of course the nice idea of being able to do different combos. So you create your combo. You can see here in the bottom of the screen, my head's thankfully not covering it. You can see what each attack does. So I have like a really simple, cheap, and effective opener. And then a follow-up that's a stronger hit at 100 attack power. And then a finisher, which is a slightly stronger, and I say slightly, 340. This is the strongest attack I've picked up so far. I kind of rushed to get this on Leticia because I saw it on the tree and it looked pretty cool. It is lengthy though, so there definitely is an opportunity cost in using it. And it also costs 4 AP, so that's pretty hefty. Then I have my AoE focused kind of thing where I open up with a quick rapid blow, then I do my AoE attack, and then I have a nice quick little finishing combination there. And then my last one, I open with a barrier attack, which reflects things, like projectiles supposedly, and gives me a moment of invincibility if I use it. So it's kind of like a parry attack. Not that it works exactly like one, I just utilize it like that because it gives me some defense. And it's also useful when you're close to something, it just does repeat damage in that specific spot. Then I use another familiar ability, and then I link to a final attack, which isn't that great, but I haven't been, I don't have anything else to put there. You can also do hold attacks. I put my magic-based active skills here. So like I have one which increases my defense, I have one that clears my own status elements, and I have one which gives all my allies 20% of my corresponding abilities, which is pretty cool. One for all. So, if you're a My Hero Academia fan, no, it's definitely not the same power as that. But, you get these different skills, you can mix and match, and I really like that system. It's pretty cool. You also have passive skills you can assign and level up. Now, you can strengthen any skill you pick up. So, for example, I could get like another 3 points on this with a little bit of my level up juice. Spending some of my EXP basically on this would be somewhat useful. I haven't felt the need to do a lot of this yet because I'm still experimenting with skills, but it looks like you can get some pretty sizable power gains just on leveling up your combat skills. You can level up your active skills, so you can see these are kind of smaller gains, like especially this one's like 1% increases. So sometimes, I'm sure those will eventually become worth it. Sometimes the differences are pretty big though. They might add something unique to the skill that wasn't there before when you level it up, like a whole nother attribute. So it seems like eventually it is worth leveling up. But right now I'm still in the phase of let me collect skills and see what they do. Then this skill seems to be whatever you use with the Doom machine. So that's what the synchro skill is. And then the IC skill is your crafting skill. And then everyone has their own active skill, combat skills, and things that you're making. not everybody I've given active skills to yet because I've been focusing on attacks. But here you can see some of the attacks that our man Raymond does, which are all like really heavy, big blows. You can see, which are pretty cool. I tend to like heavy characters, but in this kind of combat, I definitely like the the speedy, overwhelming style a little bit more. It makes me feel a little more reactive. And then you can see he's got his own like little thing, but basically everybody has a slight variant on their charge. And has some different mechanics to it, which is kind of cool. Albert has his own thing. His mobility is much higher than other characters because he can cancel out and use skills. And then the more interesting one, Nina, she actually only targets your allies, and she does a heal, which is interesting. And actually helpful. I say interesting like it was negative. It's not. She has some pretty cool skills. Her skills are all centered around either pushing enemies away or healing friends or even doing a revival. So that's incredibly helpful. Our man Albert, he seems to be the ranged kind of focused character. He's got his chakrams, which he can kind of throw. And then he's also got magic, which you can spec into, which is kind of slow to cast. But I tend to try and pick up magic when I see it because, it's JRPG, there's going to be elemental weaknesses, let's be honest. And Leticia seems to mostly be focused on just various bits of swordplay. She does get a wind element on certain attacks, so I was sure to pick that up. You can kind of see that you would spend a lot of SP leveling up abilities, but you also spend that SP on leveling up this tree. You might say I went a little bit down here for a tiny bit of defense and a tiny bit of magic, mostly because I wanted to pick up this reflect skill, because I saw that and I was like, a moment of invincibility, you say. And that was interesting. But there's other good skills around here. Most of them are elemental imbuements. So I kind of said to myself, okay, I'm probably not going to focus on magic right away with her. I want to make sure she can do close quarters combat, and I will probably, want to get some more of that stuff later. She does get some cool things here, but this is, int-based stuff, and I don't want to make her necessarily int-based right away. There's resistances, there's passive skills you can pick up. So here is the effect of the factor on equipped armor. So I assume that's just more defense. So some of these skills I'm definitely going to want to pick up. Increased EXP, although that weakens you. I'll probably put that on a character that's just not meant to be super powerful. There's extend dodges, a potency of items. Then there's active skills like increasing your attack, like basically your damage steroids or defense steroids. And then I went straight this way because I saw a lot of attacks here. For example, like with our Grand Mauler, this one, the AoE attack, it's been incredibly useful. I highly recommend going for it pretty quickly. And then Supernova, which was very expensive. So I went for some pretty expensive things at first. I'm probably going to start rounding her out by going into some attack, going into some resistances, and then we'll see. Everyone's tree is a little bit different. So Raymond, the button configuration can be a little confusing at times. There's a lot of stuff going on. Like you can hit R1 and L1 and R2 and go all over the place. So Raymond's got a different build, and I went for some of his big attacks, but I'm also picking up some defense. I want to get him the ability to heal when taking damage, mostly because I don't control him as much, so I'm kind of just trying to make him a little beefed up so he can take hits, and then I want to see if I can get him to focus a little bit more on damage dealing after that. I don't know that he can focus on much else. If he has some sort of CC with his knockdowns and such, I will probably try to do that, but I haven't analyzed his tree as much. Albert has a similar different thing going on here. He's got like some magic down here, which I'm kind of interested in getting. You can get something called Demon Gate, which looks kind of cool for some crowd control himself. I've just kind of been picking up some health on him because he was dying a lot on me because I'm on the hardest difficulty, and he's not as geared out as some of my other characters. And then Nina has this really interesting thing going on. I'm rushing. Oh, and I can unlock this, I think. Here, I can get the revive. So these are pretty expensive skills, but I rushed getting her AoE heal, which it's strange because this one has a similar... there's a Tingling Chimes and there's a Tingling Chimes ceremony. This one says it might be fun to then switch characters. I'm not sure if that means it gets stronger when you switch or if it's just like a channel. It seems like it's a channeled effect as opposed to a used one, but I'm not entirely sure. So whatever. I just picked it up because it's a heal, and you see a stronger heal, you got to pick that up early. And a revive is of course always handy. Next, I'm probably going to work on bulking her up, probably going down this defense up so she doesn't just get knocked out, because, you know, a healer is not too useful if she's dead. So we'll see what I focus on next. But you can kind of see this gets interesting, especially when you consider that you can start increasing skills, leveling them up, making them more effective for everybody. The downside, of course, is you spend a lot of time kind of looking through your area here and saying, okay, what do I want to put on my list? You know, it's not anything bad, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure how I want to do it. So yeah, I probably shouldn't focus on that right now, but I will look at that a little bit more, and I'll kind of try to figure out, you know, what am I trying to do? What do I want to have happen? But it's neat. I really like the system. It's pretty good. There's side quests, and they're not that great. I don't know how important they are. I've been trying to do them, but they're kind of basic. Some of them have some degree of attention that you need to pay. Like one of them was talking about how this guy, he ate a meal and then he feels like he's always getting attacked by these worms, and he's asking you like, why is it always me? And they specify, you know, like, oh, he had a meal at the end. So if you mimic that and you eat food and you go to the specific spot, you'll get attacked, and it's because the food he ate drew in the enemies. It's you know, simple stuff like that. Sometimes it's just go beat up some bandits, nothing extravagant, and then just hand you some stuff, so that's okay. There is a JRPG card game, which, you know, of course there is. It's called a SOA, and you basically build a deck of these miniatures, and you put them on a playing board, and you try to surround the enemy ones and just put your most powerful ones out on the board. It's okay. Thankfully, it's not super complicated. It's pretty easy. Also, I like that they have Lenneth as a character that they give you, because she's a favorite of mine from Valkyrie Profile. But it's easy enough. It's okay. I'm not a big fan of these mini games because sometimes I feel like they put too many important items behind them because, you know, JRPG rules. But at least it's not terrible and it's not annoying to do. So far I found that okay to do. Overall, yeah, with a little polishing, with a little work, this could become a 7. It's not groundbreaking. It's not going to be something that completely sucks someone in and, you know, makes them fall in love with JRPGs. I don't think it would, at least. But it's good enough, and if you're really hungry for that like sort of fantasy vibe and you'd like that action combat, you might have a really good time with this. I'm having a pretty good time. Personally, I'm starting to actually really like it. I thought I wouldn't, but I can't in good conscience give it a higher score than a 6 because it has a lot of little issues, some performance things, and, you know, some frustrations. Like when you go into combat, you know, it kind of sucks to have low AP. Like right now, that huge bar of AP is what I usually have when I'm actively playing the game, because I know what I'm doing, or at least, you know, at this point I know what I'm doing, as I almost run off a cliff. And I play decently well enough that I don't have to worry about having like AP constantly, which I like, but it sucks when you reload and you start out with just like 4 little bars. And then also chain knockdowns are kind of a problem I've noticed with some enemies, especially casters. They'll do like a certain cast and they'll hit you like 2 or 3 times on the ground, and then if more of them are casting it, you're just getting juggled. Like, look, like that can just be a little annoying, and I can't just dodge out of it. Maybe eventually I get a skill for that, and that'll be a little better. Another nuisance seems to be cliffs, because enemies seem to survive despite being off the cliff. Like that one down there. I'll just try and kill it over here, but... oh, I'm out of AP. Oh, goodbye! Alright, and then the final really annoying thing that I've noticed so far is if I try to teleport away, let's say I try to go to another area, because they do eventually give you this, they give you this message, and they always give you this message. You will be unable to witness certain events if you decide to fast travel to this location. Now, at first, when I heard that, I was like, oh, I must be missing like a little mini event, because they have like these little side things that go on if you talk to your friends in town when they, like, you know, they go off to do their own thing, which is a nice touch. But no, the messages they're referring to could be those important events, or they could also be just someone saying, hey, aren't we supposed to be going north? Aren't we supposed to be going this way? Or, hey, check out this relatively uninteresting tree over here. Isn't that something? And I don't really think that you should get warned for that kind of dialogue. I had to look that up. So that's apparently the kinds of things that they mean that you're missing. So my rule of thumb for you, if you play this game, is just if it's somewhere you haven't gone before, or it's something related to the main story, just run there in case there's some dialogue and you care about that, like I do, because you're a weirdo who just loves lore and character development, even if it's not that great, because I can appreciate some cheese. But otherwise, if you're backtracking, if you're running around trying to challenge someone to, a card game of Yu-Gi-Oh, then you might want to just fast travel anyways, despite that warning. Those kinds of things are things I feel like they should have cleaned up a little bit, because that's a little imperfect. One final thing that I think is really good that I just want to add on is I love that they go over what has happened in the main story so far. So that means if I, pause this game and I come back a little later, I can at least read these, events and have an idea of what's going on. It even also covers side stories, so little conversations I've had. Like this one talking about medicinal techniques, which was the needle I think I mentioned earlier, and the vaccinations. It covers the things you go over, and I wish more games would do that. Still, despite some of these pros, there's definitely a list of cons. This game, with a little more polish, a little more love, could really stand out. I'm actually enjoying it more than I enjoyed Tales of Arise, because at least it's not stopping me every 5 seconds for the characters to say the same thing they've been saying forever and jerking me around with like, oh, these two characters love each other, but they're not gonna admit it until the very end of the game, even though they basically admitted it 8 times already. I mean, I'm sure that this game could run into that. I don't know yet. But so far, everyone at least is playing their part, and things are quick and punchy, and combat's fun and effective, and I like using big moves, even if I get beat up sometimes. And I love that I can just take control of someone completely different in combat and do something a little different than usual. Now, it might not always play out well, but you can see that I can do something a little different, like get knocked out instantly. There's a reason why I don't try to charge her into combat too much. Let me try to salvage this. That attack is insanely powerful, as you can see. That's why it was worth getting. You can also blindside groups of enemies. Notably, I need to learn how to use some characters. But probably it wasn't a good idea to test out the healer character on the giant ogre. But this is also why it's useful to this is why it's also useful to know what each of your characters does. I've been meaning to mess with Nina's attacks, but she really doesn't have a lot of options yet. Most of her stuff is just like AoE knockbacks. She really is pretty highly focused on healing. I know she can target her allies. I think I just did something a little stupid there. So that put me in a bad spot. Not what I intended to do. But it goes to show you that I still have plenty to learn. One other nice feature, when you do this little stop mode, you can do quick recovery, so you can just spam use your items and run pretty close to running low, but you can fully heal like that. So yeah, overall, I think this game's pretty enjoyable. I think if you like JRPGs, if you like action combat with a lot of customization and actual RPG options in it, this game might really be for you. So even though I'm saying it's an overall 6 out of 10, you might find this as like an 8 or a 9 if you're a big JRPG fan, you're a big Star Ocean fan. If you were turned off because this didn't look so good to you, I hope that this changes your mind a little bit, or it reaffirms your idea on it. On combat, you might have noticed that you can target different points of an enemy. There are weak points, so you can target like an enemy's tail or their eyes, or do different things to, basically know that you can blindside them. Some of them also turn red when they're doing big attacks, so you can kind of have a tell for when it's okay to blindside them. So that's kind of cool. It is very important to do the blindside mechanic. It opens up a lot of doors. So if you're playing that, you just be ready to do that. You don't have to perfect dodge all the time. I'm playing on the hardest difficulty, which is why Nina got blasted and hit once and died. And she also doesn't have a lot of defense. So, keep these things in mind. There's some fun to be had here. There's some challenge to be had here. It's overall a good time. So yeah, I recommend it, even though it's not the best. All right, everyone. That's going to be it from me. I hope you all enjoy, and peace out. Let me try and just close this up here.